On the morning of January 9th, 1943, a hotel maid named Alice Monaghan pushed open the door to room 3327 on the 33rd floor of the New Yorker Hotel. The "Do Not Disturb" sign had been hanging on the handle for 2 days. Inside, she found the body of an 86-year-old man, alone in a narrow bed, in a room streaked with pigeon droppings and scattered with crumbs of bread. His name was Nikola Tesla. He had invented the electrical system that powered the very building where he died. His net worth at the time of death was less than $1,000. Within hours, the FBI would seize his papers, searching for a weapon he claimed could destroy 10,000 airplanes. This is the story of the room built on pigeons and genius. Chapter 1: The Largest Hotel Nobody Could Fill. On January 2nd, 1930, the most expensive hotel in New York City opened its doors 12 weeks after the stock market destroyed the world that built it. The New Yorker Hotel rose 43 stories above 34th Street and 8th Avenue. It was a cathedral of commerce dressed in red brick and limestone, its name blazing in neon letters tall enough to read from the Hudson River. The architect was Sugarman and Berger. The developer was the Mack family, garment industry titans who believed that what Manhattan needed, more than anything else, was the largest hotel on the planet. They were not wrong about the need. They were simply too late for the world that would have filled it. The lobby alone announced the scale of the ambition. Art Deco metalwork in geometric patterns framed every doorway. The ceilings soared. Brass fixtures caught the light from chandeliers designed to make arriving guests feel that they had stepped into a palace. The elevators were the fastest in the city. The hallways stretched so long that bellhops used hand signals to communicate across their length. The numbers told a story of almost reckless confidence. 2,503 rooms. A staff of 2,000. A construction cost of $22.5 million, the equivalent of nearly $400 million today. The building contained its own barbershop, its own hospital, its own laundry processing 450,000 pieces of linen each day. It had a private tunnel connecting to Pennsylvania Station, so that guests arriving by rail could walk underground from their train to the lobby without ever touching the street. It had a retractable ice rink on the terrace. It had a power plant 4 stories below the lobby that could generate enough electricity for a small city. And it opened into a world that no longer wanted it. The stock market crash of October 1929 had arrived like a detonation 12 weeks before the ribbon cutting. The Roaring Twenties, that decade of silk and speculation, had ended in a single autumn. Fortunes that had been measured in millions were now measured in debts. The men who would have filled those 2,500 rooms, the industrialists, the financiers, the railroad barons traveling with their secretaries and their steamer trunks, were suddenly selling their cars and closing their country houses. The world the New Yorker was designed to serve had vanished before its doors even opened. The hotel tried everything. It slashed room rates. It marketed to conventions. It promoted its ice rink and its rooftop dining room. But occupancy in those early years was brutal. A building designed to hold the wealthy now had to compete for traveling salesmen and budget tourists. The hallways echoed. The enormous laundry facility processed fewer linens than it was built for. The private power plant hummed in the basement, generating electricity for floors where no one slept. And yet the building survived. It survived because it was extraordinary, because its engineers had built something so technically advanced that even the Depression could not make it irrelevant. The ice rink drew crowds. The tunnel to Penn Station was a genuine marvel, The ballrooms hosted events that reminded New York it was still a city worth visiting. The telephone system alone connected 10,000 lines. The kitchens could serve 5,000 meals in a single sitting. The New Yorker endured, not because the timing was right, but because the building itself was too magnificent to fail quickly. Through the 30s, the hotel adapted. Big band orchestras played in the terrace room, broadcasting live over the radio to millions of listeners. Benny Goodman, Woody Herman, and Tommy Dorsey all performed beneath its Art Deco ceilings. The music drew guests the stock market had chased away. Dancing was cheaper than speculation, and the New Yorker became, improbably, a destination for a nation learning to enjoy itself on a budget. It would take decades, not years, to bring it down. But in 1930, none of that mattered yet. What mattered was the scale. What mattered was the audacity. What mattered was a building that embodied everything America believed about itself. That size was greatness, that technology was destiny, and that if you built something large enough, the world would have no choice but to fill it. The world, as it turned out, had other plans. What happens to a palace built for a world that no longer exists? That question hung in the air above 34th Street, like the red neon letters of the hotel's name. And it would hang there for the next 90 years, unanswered, as the building waited for the man whose story it would eventually become inseparable from. That man was already alive. He was already in New York, and he was already running out of money. Chapter 2: 4 Cents and a Flying Machine. In 1884, a 28-year-old Serbian immigrant stepped off a boat in New York Harbor carrying 4 cents, a book of poems and designs for a machine that would change civilization. His name was Nikola Tesla. He was tall, angular, with dark hair and eyes that people remembered long after they forgot his words. He spoke 8 languages. He could recite entire books from memory. He had come to America with a letter of introduction to the most famous inventor in the country, Thomas Edison, and a head full of ideas that Edison would come to despise. Tesla's genius announced itself early and violently. Born in 1856 in the village of Smiljan, in what is now Croatia, he was the 4th of 5 children in the family of a Serbian Orthodox priest. His mother, Juka, was an inventor in her own right, a woman who built household tools and mechanical devices despite having no formal education. Tesla would later credit her with giving him his inventive mind. His older brother Dane was the family's golden child, brilliant and beloved by everyone who knew him. When Dane died in a riding accident, the young Nikola, who was perhaps 7 years old, was left with a wound that never healed and a conviction that he would have to be extraordinary enough for 2. He threw himself into study with a ferocity that alarmed his teachers. He could perform integral calculus in his head. He visualized inventions so completely that he could test them mentally before building a single prototype, running imaginary machines for weeks to check for wear on parts that did not yet exist. He once nearly died of cholera as a teenager, and when his father promised he could study engineering instead of entering the priesthood if he survived, he recovered as if by sheer will. The vision came in Budapest in 1882. Tesla was walking through a park at sunset, reciting Goethe from memory, when the complete design for an alternating current motor appeared in his mind. Not a sketch, not an idea, the entire machine rotating in 3 dimensions, as real to him as the trees lining the path. He drew it in the dirt with a stick. It would take him 2 years to build it and 40 years to receive proper credit, but in that single moment, the future of electrical power was decided. Edison's New York was a city wired for direct current. The lights on Pearl Street ran on Edison's system, which pushed electricity in a single direction like water through a pipe. It was reliable for short distances. It was useless for anything more than a mile from the generating station. Tesla knew that alternating current, which reversed direction many times per second, could travel vast distances over thin wires with almost no loss. It was the difference between watering a garden with a bucket and watering it with a river. Edison hired Tesla almost immediately. The work was grueling. Tesla redesigned Edison's generators, improved his dynamos, and worked 18-hour days for months on end in Edison's laboratory on Pearl Street. The two men could not have been more different. Edison was practical, blunt, and relentlessly commercial. He tested his inventions through brute force trial and error, trying thousands of materials for his light bulb filament until one worked. Tesla designed in his mind, seeing the finished machine before he touched a tool. Edison distrusted mathematics. Tesla lived inside it. Edison allegedly promised Tesla $50,000 for the improvements to his generators. When Tesla completed the work and asked for the money, Edison laughed. "Tesla," he reportedly said, "you don't understand our American humor." Tesla quit the next day. It was the beginning of a rivalry that would shape the electrical age. What followed were years of genuine hardship. Tesla dug ditches for the Edison Company to survive, earning $2 a day in the frozen streets of Manhattan. He filed patents that went nowhere. He slept in boarding houses and ate in cheap diners. He was humiliated, exhausted, and entirely alone in a foreign country. But he never stopped working on alternating current. He never stopped drawing circuits in his notebook and running machines in his mind. And in 1887, he filed the patents that would change everything. A complete polyphase alternating current system, including the induction motor, the transformer, and the distribution network. 40 patents in total, each one a piece of a system that fit together like the gears of a clock. George Westinghouse came calling in 1888. Westinghouse was Edison's fiercest rival, a Pittsburgh industrialist who understood immediately what Tesla's system could do. He offered Tesla $60,000 for the patents, plus a royalty of $2.50 per horsepower of electricity generated. Tesla agreed. Overnight, he went from a ditch digger to a millionaire. Before he turned 35, and he was one of the most celebrated inventors in America. The royalty clause was written into the contract in plain language, $2.50 per horsepower. It seemed modest at the time, but alternating current was about to power the entire world. That clause would become a ticking bomb, and Tesla himself would be the one to detonate it. He just did not know it yet. Chapter 3. The Man Who Lit the World on Fire. In 1893, two men stood before the greatest audience in America and turned on the lights with electricity that Thomas Edison swore would kill them all. The World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago was the most spectacular event the country had ever staged. 27 million people would visit its grounds over 6 months. It occupied more than 600 acres on the shore of Lake Michigan. It was America's announcement to the world that it had arrived, that it was modern, that it was electric. And the man who lit it was Nikola Tesla. Westinghouse had won the contract to illuminate the fair, underbidding Edison's General Electric by nearly $1 million. The bid was aggressive, almost reckless. Westinghouse knew that the fair was not just a contract, it was a demonstration. If alternating current could light the White City, it could light the world. Tesla's system powered 200,000 incandescent bulbs across the fairgrounds. The effect was beyond anything visitors had imagined. The White City, as it was called, glowed like a vision from the future. Visitors who had never seen electric light wept openly. Farm families from the Midwest stood in silence, staring at fountains illuminated from below, at buildings outlined in light against the night sky, at a world they had not known was possible. The darkness of the 19th century was ending, and it was ending in Chicago, under lights powered by a system designed by a Serbian immigrant who had arrived in the country with 4 cents in his pocket. Edison had fought viciously to prevent this moment. His campaign against alternating current was one of the ugliest chapters in the history of American industry. He had publicly electrocuted dogs and horses with AC power to demonstrate its danger. He had secretly funded the development of the electric chair, which used alternating current to associate Tesla's technology with death. He had coined the verb to Westinghouse, meaning to be electrocuted. None of it worked. The fair proved that alternating current was not only safe, but superior. The war of currents was over. Tesla had won, and for a few bright years, he enjoyed it. Tesla became a celebrity of the first order. He dined with Mark Twain, who became a close friend and a frequent visitor to Tesla's laboratory. He attended gatherings at Delmonico's restaurant with the wealthiest and most powerful people in New York. He was photographed more than any inventor of his era. He demonstrated his inventions in his laboratory on South Fifth Avenue, passing 1,000,000 volts of electricity through his own body while guests watched in astonishment, their hair standing on end from the static charge in the air. He held glowing phosphorescent tubes in his bare hands, lighting them without wires, years before anyone else could explain how it was done. He was handsome, over 6 feet tall, immaculate in his dress, and possessed of a showman's instinct that rivaled Edison's own. The newspapers adored him. He was the wizard, the magician, the man from the future. He gave interviews from his laboratory surrounded by crackling coils and sheets of artificial lightning that reached 20 feet across the room. He claimed to have received signals from Mars. He described inventions that would not exist for another century: remote-controlled vehicles, wireless communication, devices that could transmit images through the air. Robert Underwood Johnson, the editor of Century magazine and one of Tesla's closest friends, called him the most remarkable man he had ever met. In 1899, Tesla built a laboratory in Colorado Springs and produced artificial lightning bolts 130 feet long. The thunder was heard 15 miles away. He burned out the generator at the local power station. He was, by any measure, the most dramatic scientist alive. He was also, in these years, desperately lonely. Tesla never married. He never had a romantic relationship that history has recorded. He claimed that celibacy was essential to his creative powers, that the energy he saved by avoiding human entanglement went directly into his work. But those who knew him saw something more complicated. He was fastidious to the point of compulsion. He could not touch human hair. He could not look at pearls. He counted everything in sets of 3. He washed his hands obsessively. He required exactly 18 napkins at every meal, stacked in a precise arrangement beside his plate. These were not the habits of a man who had simply chosen solitude. They were the walls of a fortress built by a mind that could not tolerate the chaos of human closeness. But in 1893, none of that mattered to the public. Tesla was at the peak. He was famous. He was wealthy. He was desired. He stood in the glow of 200,000 light bulbs at the greatest fair in American history, and he was the reason they were shining. Everything that came after was a fall, and the first step down was one he took himself. Chapter 4. The contract he tore in half. Somewhere between 1890 and 1900, Nikola Tesla made the most expensive gesture of loyalty in the history of American business. The facts are not in dispute, though the exact date has been lost to time. What is known is this: George Westinghouse, the man who had bought Tesla's alternating current patents, came to Tesla in a state of crisis. The financial panic of 1890 had ravaged Wall Street. Banks were collapsing. Credit had evaporated. Westinghouse Electric, which had borrowed heavily to build out the alternating current infrastructure across the country, was drowning in debt. The bankers circling Westinghouse demanded restructuring, and the single largest liability on the company's books was Tesla's royalty contract, $2.50 per horsepower. It had seemed modest when the contract was signed, but alternating current was now powering factories, streetcars, and entire cities. The royalties owed to Tesla were accumulating at a staggering rate. Estimates of what the contract would eventually have been worth range from $12 million to the tens of millions. In today's currency, that figure exceeds $300 million. Some historians believe it could have been worth far more. Westinghouse came to Tesla not as a businessman, but as something closer to a friend. He explained the situation plainly. The company could not survive with the royalty obligation. The bankers would force a sale. If Westinghouse Electric collapsed, the future of alternating current would fall into the hands of Edison's allies, who would bury it. Tesla listened. And then he did something that no financial advisor, no lawyer, no rational actor in the history of capitalism would recommend. He tore up the contract, not metaphorically, not partially. He took the physical document that guaranteed him a fortune beyond imagination, and he destroyed it. He accepted a lump sum payment, believed to be around $216,000, in exchange for surrendering all future royalties on the most important electrical patents in the world. To put that number in perspective, by the time Tesla died in 1943, the alternating current system was generating billions of kilowatt hours of electricity annually across the globe. At $2.50 per horsepower, the royalties would have made Tesla one of the wealthiest human beings who ever lived. He would have been richer than Edison, richer than Westinghouse, richer perhaps than Morgan himself. Instead, he accepted a payment that would be exhausted within a few years of comfortable living. Why? The question has consumed historians and biographers for more than a century. The simplest explanation is loyalty. Westinghouse had believed in Tesla when no one else would. He had given Tesla the resources to prove that alternating current worked. He had stood beside him during the War of Currents when Edison was electrocuting animals and whispering about death. Tesla may have felt that saving Westinghouse was simply the right thing to do. But there are darker possibilities. Tesla's relationship with money was, to put it gently, dysfunctional. He spent lavishly when he had it. He lived in the finest hotels, ate at the best restaurants, and dressed like a man who believed elegance was a moral obligation. But he never accumulated wealth. He never invested. He never built the kind of financial cushion that his peers, men like Edison and Westinghouse themselves, understood was necessary to survive in America. Money, for Tesla, was a tool for living, not a thing to be hoarded. The idea of sitting on a contract and watching the numbers grow may have been genuinely incomprehensible to him. There is also the possibility, suggested by some who study the psychology of genius, that Tesla simply could not think in dollars. His mind was wired for frequency and voltage, for rotating magnetic fields and resonant circuits. The concept of compound financial interest may have been as foreign to him as the concept of alternating current was to a horse. He could hold an entire electrical system in his imagination. He could not hold a budget. Whatever the reason, the consequences were irreversible. In a single gesture, Tesla gave away the fortune that would have sustained him for the rest of his life. He would never again be financially secure. Every hotel bill, every laboratory lease, every meal for the next 4 decades would be a negotiation, a favor, or a debt. He did not seem to notice. Or if he noticed, he did not care. In the years immediately following the torn contract, Tesla continued to live lavishly. He kept his suite at the Waldorf Astoria. He dined at the finest restaurants. He ordered his suits from the best tailors and his shirts from Paris. He tipped generously. He gave to charities. He lived exactly as a man of his brilliance and reputation should have lived, except that the financial foundation beneath that life was now made of sand. His friends saw it. His admirers saw it. Even journalists who loved the spectacle of Tesla, I occasionally noted in their articles that the great inventor seemed to have no interest in money. What they did not understand was that the disinterest was not a pose. It was a genuine inability, as real and as consequential as a blindness or a deafness. Tesla could not perceive money the way other people perceived it. It was invisible to him in a way that electromagnetic fields were not. The pattern was set. Tesla would continue to invent. He would continue to dream on a scale that dwarfed his contemporaries. But he would do so without the one resource that America demands of its geniuses: the ability to fund their own futures. George Westinghouse survived. His company thrived. Alternating current conquered the world, and the man who made it possible had just guaranteed that he would spend the rest of his life watching other people profit from his work. The next project would be the one that finished him. Chapter 5: The Tower That Reached Too Far. On 200 acres of Long Island farmland, Tesla built a tower designed to give free electricity to the entire world, and it bankrupted him completely. The idea was called Wardenclyffe. Tesla envisioned it as the first node in a global wireless network, a system that could transmit not only messages, but power itself through the earth and the atmosphere, without wires, without meters, without bills. Every home, every factory, every ship at sea would simply receive the energy it needed from the planet itself. It was the most ambitious technological vision anyone had ever proposed. It was also, from a business perspective, completely insane. Tesla needed money. He went to the most powerful financier in the world, John Pierpont Morgan. Morgan was not a man who gave money away. He was the architect of American capitalism, the banker who had personally bailed out the United States Treasury during the Panic of 1895. He controlled railroads, steel companies, and banks. His personal fortune was so large that he could move markets with a single decision. He was precise, ruthless, and deeply skeptical of anything he could not control. But Tesla was persuasive. In person, with his commanding height and his intense dark eyes and his ability to describe the future as though he had already been there, Tesla could convince almost anyone of almost anything. And Tesla was, critically, not entirely honest about what he was building. To Morgan, Tesla pitched Wardenclyffe as a wireless communication system, a competitor to Guglielmo Marconi's radio telegraph that would send messages across the Atlantic faster and more reliably than any existing technology. Morgan understood communication. Communication made money. Messages between London and New York meant contracts, stock orders, diplomatic cables. He invested $150,000, a significant sum even for Morgan, and expected a return. What Tesla actually built was something far grander and far less profitable. The Wardenclyffe Tower rose 187 feet above the Long Island soil. Its copper dome was 68 feet in diameter. Its foundations plunged 120 feet into the earth, reaching for the water table, because Tesla believed the planet itself could serve as a conductor. The construction costs spiraled past $200,000 and kept climbing. Morgan began asking questions. Tesla began avoiding them. The letters between the two men, preserved in archives at the Library of Congress, chart the disintegration of a relationship built on deception. They are painful to read. Tesla's letters grow increasingly desperate, veering between grandiose promises and transparent pleas for mercy. He tells Morgan the project is on the verge of success. He tells Morgan that Marconi is stealing his ideas. He tells Morgan that the tower will change the fate of nations. He begs for more money. Morgan's replies are short, clipped, and final. He demanded to know where the first $150,000 had gone. Tesla hinted, at last, at the true scope of the project. He was not building a telegraph. He was building a system to transmit free energy to the entire planet. Morgan was furious. No investor wants to hear that the product will be given away. "I have received your letter," Morgan reportedly wrote, "and I am sorry to learn of the amount you have already spent." The subtext was clear. The money was gone. There would be no more. Morgan never invested another cent. When Tesla wrote again and again and again, Morgan stopped replying altogether. Tesla tried everything. He wrote to Morgan's associates and business partners. He sought other investors, pitching the project to anyone who would listen. He pawned laboratory equipment. He sold his remaining patents at a fraction of their value to pay the most urgent debts. He wrote to the Astor family. He wrote to Thomas Fortune Ryan. He wrote to anyone whose name appeared in the society pages. Nothing worked. The rich men of New York had heard about Wardenclyffe, and what they had heard was that J.P. Morgan had walked away. In the world of early 20th century finance, that was a death sentence. By 1905, the laboratory at Wardenclyffe was shuttered. The tower stood empty on the Long Island plain, a skeleton of copper and steel against the sky. A monument to what happens when a genius builds faster than the world can follow. The numbers tell the story of the collapse with brutal precision. 187 feet of tower. A 68-foot dome of hand-formed copper. Foundations sunk 120 feet below the surface. Total construction costs exceeding $200,000. A laboratory building of 15,000 square feet, filled with equipment that represented the cutting edge of electrical science. And all of it, every beam, every coil, every foot of copper wire, would be sold for scrap in 1917 for approximately $20,000. A decade of work reduced to the price of raw metal. Marconi, meanwhile, had sent a wireless signal across the Atlantic in 1901 using technology that Tesla argued was derived from his own patents. The Supreme Court would eventually agree, ruling in Tesla's favor in 1943. But by then, both men would be dead, and it would not matter. The loss of Wardenclyffe broke something in Tesla that never healed, not his mind, which remained brilliant and restless, not his ambition, which remained enormous and ungovernable, but his connection to the practical world, his ability to translate genius into funded reality, was severed at Wardenclyffe and never restored. The tower stood empty for years, a copper skeleton on the Long Island plain, visible from passing trains, a landmark of failure that Tesla could not bring himself to visit. In 1908, his laboratory at Wardenclyffe was seized by creditors. The equipment was sold. The building was padlocked. Tesla owed money to the construction firms, to the suppliers, to the local businesses that had extended him credit. He settled what he could and ignored what he could not. In 1917, as America entered the First World War, the tower was demolished by the new owners to recover the value of its materials and, some said, because the government feared it could be used by German agents as a communication device. Tesla read about the demolition in the newspaper. He did not attend. He was 61 years old. He had changed the world, and he had nothing to show for it except a rented room, a stack of patents whose value had been signed away, and a reputation that was beginning to shift from genius to eccentric. For the next 3 decades, he would live in a series of New York hotels, each one slightly less grand than the last, always behind on his bills, always promising the next great invention. He moved from the Waldorf Astoria to the St. Regis, to the Hotel Marguerite, to the Hotel Pennsylvania. Each move was a step down. Each departure was preceded by an unpaid bill and a quiet negotiation. The last hotel would be the New Yorker, and what he found in its basement would be the cruelest irony of his extraordinary life. Chapter 6. 80 feet below the lobby, Edison still won. 4 basement levels beneath the New Yorker Hotel, behind a 60-foot switchboard, the engineers called the Frankenstein board, the dead man's rival was still running the lights. This is the detail that transforms the story of Nikola Tesla from a biography into something closer to a parable. The man who won the war of currents, who proved that alternating current was the superior system, who lit the Chicago World's Fair and electrified Niagara Falls, spent his final decade living in a building powered entirely by Thomas Edison's direct current. The New Yorker Hotel's power plant was, in its own right, an engineering marvel. Built into the lowest 4 levels of the building, it was a self-contained electrical generating station that made the hotel independent of the New York City power grid. 4 massive steam engines drove generators capable of producing 2,575 kilowatts of electrical power. The system used direct current throughout, the same technology that Edison had championed and Tesla had defeated in the public arena decades earlier. The reasons were practical, not ideological. When the hotel was designed in the late 1920s, the local utility, Consolidated Edison, supplied direct current to much of Midtown Manhattan. The hotel's engineers built their plant to match the existing infrastructure. Direct current was simpler for the motors and elevators within a single building. There was no conspiracy, no tribute to Edison, no deliberate insult to Tesla. It was simply the way things were done in that part of the city at that time. But the symbolism was devastating. The Frankenstein board, as the staff called the main switchboard, stretched 60 feet across the sub-basement. Its face was covered with dials, switches, and meters labeled for every system in the building. The kitchens, the ballrooms, the ice rink, the laundry, the elevators, the 2,500 guest rooms. It was the nerve center of a building that consumed more electricity than many small towns, and every watt of it was direct current. The cogeneration system was decades ahead of its time. The steam engines that drove the generators also produced heat, which was captured and used to warm the building, heat the water, and run the laundry. Waste heat from the generators fed the kitchens. In excess capacity was stored and redistributed. The hotel was, in energy terms, a closed loop, a machine that wasted almost nothing. The fuel was oil, delivered by truck and stored in massive tanks in the lowest sub-basement. The coal dust and diesel fumes mingled in the corridors below the lobby, a permanent industrial smell that guests 30 floors above never detected. Engineers in overalls walked these lower levels around the clock, monitoring gauges, adjusting valves, feeding the appetite of a building that never slept. The hotel would remain independent of the public power grid for more than 30 years, one of the longest stretches of energy self-sufficiency in the history of American commercial buildings. Tesla checked into the New Yorker hotel in 1933. He was 77 years old. He arrived with trunks full of papers, a wardrobe that was elegant but fraying at the cuffs, and a reputation that had faded from celebrity to curiosity. The newspapers still mentioned him occasionally, usually in connection with some improbable claim about a new invention. But the tone had changed. He was no longer the wizard of electricity. He was the old man who talked about death rays and cosmic energy. The Westinghouse Corporation, perhaps feeling some residual obligation to the man who had saved the company 4 decades earlier, had arranged to pay his hotel bills. The amount was modest. The arrangement was quiet. It was charity dressed as consulting, and both sides knew it. The room was on the 33rd floor. The number was 3327. 3327. Every digit divisible by 3 or adding to a multiple of 3. Tesla would not have accepted it otherwise. His obsession with the number 3 governed every aspect of his daily life. He walked around a building 3 times before entering. He required that his hotel room number be divisible by 3. He counted his steps. He counted his chews. He counted the volume of his soup in cubic centimeters to ensure it was divisible by 3 before he would eat it. The room was modest by the standards of his former life. He had once occupied suites at the Waldorf Astoria, surrounded by mahogany and silk. Now he had a single room with a bed, a desk, and windows that looked out over Manhattan's West Side. Below him, 33 floors down and then 4 more into the earth, Edison's direct current hummed through the Frankenstein board. Tesla likely knew. He was an electrical engineer of unmatched depth. He would have understood instantly what kind of current flowed through the walls of his room. Whether he cared is another question. By 1933, the war of currents was ancient history. Alternating current had won everywhere that mattered. Power plants and transmission lines across the entire world used Tesla's system. The New Yorker's direct current plant was an artifact, a curiosity, a reminder of a battle so thoroughly decided that even the losing technology could survive in a basement without threatening the outcome. But the image remains. Tesla, old and poor, sitting in a room lit by Edison's electricity, in a building powered by the technology he had spent his career proving obsolete. It is the kind of detail that a novelist would invent and an editor would cut for being too obvious. History, unlike fiction, does not have an editor. And now the old man was alone. The fame was gone. The fortune was gone. The laboratories were gone. What remained was a room on the 33rd floor, a mind that still crackled with ideas no one would fund, and the pigeons. The pigeons were about to become everything. Chapter 7. the pigeon he loved like a woman. Of the thousands of pigeons Nikola Tesla fed across 4 decades in Manhattan, one white bird with gray-tipped wings became the only love of his life. This is the part of the story that makes people uncomfortable. It is also the part that makes it true. Tesla's relationship with pigeons did not begin at the New Yorker hotel. It had started decades earlier, during his years of fame and wealth, when he would walk through the parks of Manhattan, scattering seed and watching the birds descend around him. Even then, when he was dining with Mark Twain and lighting up ballrooms with artificial lightning, the pigeons were a constant. He visited them daily, he learned their patterns, he gave them names. But at the New Yorker, the pigeons became his world. Every day, when his health permitted, Tesla walked from the hotel to Bryant Park, a distance of about 10 blocks. He moved slowly. He was thin, almost fragile, and his back was curved from decades of bending over workbenches. He carried bags of seed. The pigeons knew him. They would descend before he even reached the park, landing on his shoulders, his arms, his hat. Passers-by stared. Some laughed. A few recognized the old man and felt something they could not name. When it rained, or when his legs would not carry him, Tesla sent messengers. He had an account with Western Union, and he would dispatch boys to the park with bags of seed and specific instructions about which birds to look for. The messengers thought he was eccentric. The hotel staff thought he was something more. Because Tesla did not only feed the pigeons in the park, he brought them home. The windows of room 3327 were left open at all hours, in all weather. Pigeons flew in and out freely, perching on the radiator, the desk, the headboard of the bed. The windowsills were thick with droppings that hardened into a chalky crust. The carpet was scattered with crumbs of bread and crusts that Tesla tore into small pieces each morning, with fingers that trembled slightly but never lost their precision. Seeds gathered in the corners. Feathers drifted under the furniture. The smell was considerable. Guests in neighboring rooms complained. The hotel management, caught between the Westinghouse payments that covered Tesla's bill and the mounting protests of paying customers, tried diplomacy. They sent maids more frequently. They replaced the curtains, which were stained beyond cleaning. They installed extra covers on the radiators. They asked, gently, whether perhaps the windows could be closed during the coldest months. Tesla refused. He refused quietly, politely, and absolutely. The pigeons were not a hobby. They were not a symptom. They were not the eccentricity of a declining mind. They were the only beings on Earth that he could love without the terror of human closeness. And when he found an injured bird in the park, he would carry it back to the hotel in his coat, lay it on a towel beside the window, and nurse it for days or weeks until it could fly again. The hotel staff learned to expect this. They set aside extra towels. They stopped asking questions. The rituals that governed his life had grown more elaborate with age. Everything in threes. 3 napkins stacked in 3 piles of 6, totaling 18 at every meal. 3 turns around the block before entering a building. Room number divisible by 3. He polished every piece of silverware before using it. He could not eat a meal if a fly had landed anywhere near his plate. He calculated the cubic volume of his food before he would consume it. He washed his hands until they were raw. These behaviors, which modern psychology would likely identify as severe obsessive-compulsive disorder, had been present since childhood, but had intensified with age and isolation. They were the architecture of a mind that could not tolerate disorder. that needed the world to conform to mathematical patterns in order to feel safe. People were chaotic. People were unpredictable. People touched you without warning and wore pearls and shed hair and did not arrange themselves in sets of 3. Pigeons were different. Pigeons were reliable. They came when you fed them. They sat on your hand without judgment. They did not ask questions about your finances or your failed inventions or why you lived alone in a hotel room at the age of 80. They simply arrived, ate, and stayed. And one pigeon, a white female with gray-tipped wings, became more than a companion. She became, in Tesla's own words, the center of his existence. "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman," Tesla told a friend in his later years. "And she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." The statement is disquieting. It is also, if you sit with it long enough, heartbreaking. Here was a man who had held lightning in his hands, who had stood before the most powerful audiences in the world and bent electricity to his will, confessing that the deepest emotional connection of his life was with a bird. When the white pigeon died, Tesla said that a light came to him in his room, a blinding flash brighter than anything his electrical machinery had ever produced. He described it as the light of his purpose going out. After that, he said, he knew his life's work was finished. Whether you read this as metaphor, delusion, or genuine spiritual experience depends entirely on what you believe about the boundaries of the human heart. What is not in question is that Tesla meant every word. The pigeon was real. The grief was real. And the emptiness that followed was the emptiness of a man who had finally lost the last thing that connected him to the world. The hotel room with its open windows and its breadcrumbs was now just a room, and the old man in it was running out of time. Chapter 8. A Death Ray and a Cup of Warm Milk. In the same hotel suite where he nursed injured birds on towels spread across the windowsill, Tesla announced he had built a weapon capable of ending all war. The year was 1934. Tesla was 78 years old, and he was describing, in language that alternated between scientific precision and breathtaking grandiosity, a device he called the Teleforce. The press called it the Death Ray. The concept, as Tesla described it, was a particle beam weapon. It would project a concentrated stream of microscopic particles at enormous velocity, creating a beam that could destroy 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 250 miles. It would make war impossible, Tesla argued, because no nation could attack another if the defending nation possessed the beam. It was the ultimate deterrent. It was peace through the promise of annihilation. The military establishments of several nations were interested. The Soviet Union reportedly paid Tesla $25,000 for a partial set of plans. The British government sent representatives to discuss the technology. The United States War Department expressed cautious interest but never committed funding. Tesla offered the weapon to his adopted country freely, asking only for the resources to build a prototype. He was ignored. Was the Teleforce real? The question has no simple answer. Tesla's understanding of particle physics and electromagnetic fields was profound. The basic principles he described, accelerating particles to extreme velocities and projecting them as a beam, are the foundation of modern particle accelerator technology. But the specific claims he made, in destroying aircraft at 250 miles, creating an impenetrable defensive shield, were far beyond anything the technology of the 1930s could achieve. Whether Tesla knew this and exaggerated for attention, or genuinely believed he had solved the problem, remains debated. What is not debated is the effect these announcements had on his reputation. Tesla's birthday press conferences, held each July on the occasion of his birthday, had become annual events of increasing strangeness. He would invite reporters to the New Yorker hotel, serve them refreshments, and then describe his latest inventions. The death ray, a method for photographing thoughts, a new principle of physics that would overturn Einstein's theories. The reporters came because Tesla was still good copy, but the tone of their articles had shifted. The headlines no longer called him a wizard. They called him eccentric. They called him colorful. They treated him as a character, a relic of a vanished age of invention. Meanwhile, his body was failing. In 1937, at the age of 81, Tesla was struck by a taxicab while crossing a street near the hotel. The accident broke several ribs and damaged his back. He refused to see a doctor. He returned to his room, took to his bed, and never fully recovered his mobility. After the accident, his walks to Bryant Park became less frequent, then rare, then impossible. The Western Union messengers became his sole connection to the Pigeons. His diet had narrowed to almost nothing. Warm milk, bread, honey, vegetable juice, occasionally a soft-boiled egg. He ate alone in his room, measuring each portion with the precision of a laboratory experiment, calculating volumes, arranging the plates in patterns that satisfied his numerical compulsions. He had always been thin. Now he was skeletal. His clothes, still carefully pressed, hung from his frame. His cheekbones stood out sharply beneath eyes that retained their intensity even as the rest of his body diminished. The hotel staff who delivered his meals were struck by the contradiction. The meticulous arrangement of the tray, the perfectly folded napkin, the precisely measured glass of milk, and then the pigeon droppings on the windowsill 3 feet away. The financial architecture of his final years was a construction of quiet charity and institutional embarrassment. Westinghouse Electric paid his hotel bill, approximately $100 per month, in as a consulting fee for services that were never defined, never requested, and never rendered. It was the company's acknowledgement of a debt that could never be repaid in money. The Yugoslav government contributed a stipend of roughly $600 per month, arranged through the Yugoslav embassy in Washington, in recognition of Tesla's contributions to science and his status as the most famous Serbian who had ever lived. Beyond these two sources, Tesla had almost nothing. His patents had expired years ago. His laboratories were gone. His equipment had been sold or repossessed. The books and papers he had accumulated filled trunks that he stored in the basement of the hotel and in a warehouse on the west side of Manhattan. But paper has no market value. His net worth was approaching zero. The man who had once commanded $60,000 for a single set of patents, who had torn up a contract worth hundreds of millions in today's currency, was now dependent on the goodwill of a corporation he had saved from bankruptcy and a country he had left as a young man and never returned to. The hotel room was his entire world. He received few visitors. His nephew, Sava Kosanovic, came occasionally from Washington, where he served as a Yugoslav diplomat. A few old friends and admirers made the pilgrimage to the 33rd floor. But Tesla preferred solitude. He preferred the pigeons. He preferred the warm milk and the quiet. He was still inventing. His mind, whatever else was failing, remained active. He filled notebooks with designs and calculations. He wrote letters to government officials proposing new technologies. He described a motor that would run on cosmic rays. He outlined a theory of gravity that contradicted Einstein. Whether these ideas had merit or were the products of a brilliant mind untethered from practical constraints is a question that may never be answered, because the notebooks would soon be locked in a government vault. The last photograph of Tesla shows a thin, white-haired man in a dark suit standing beside a window. His eyes are still sharp. His posture, despite the broken ribs, retains a trace of the elegance that had once made him the most photographed inventor in America. He looks directly at the camera with an expression that could be read as defiance or resignation or something in between. It was taken in the New Yorker hotel. The window behind him faces west. Outside, Manhattan stretched toward the Hudson River, glittering with alternating current. Inside, the room smelled of pigeons and warm milk. The end was very close now. Chapter 9. 2 days behind, a do not disturb sign. The building that processed 450,000 pieces of linen every day could not detect that one old man on the 33rd floor had stopped breathing. Nikola Tesla died on the night of January 7th, 1943. He was 86 years old. He was alone. The exact circumstances are known only in outline. At some point during that night, in room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel, Tesla's heart stopped. He had been in declining health for months. His diet had dwindled to almost nothing. His mobility had never recovered from the taxicab accident 6 years earlier, and he had complained of chest pains to the few people who still visited him. He had not, characteristically, seen a doctor. The "Do Not Disturb" sign hung on the door handle. It had been there for 2 days. This was not unusual. Tesla valued his privacy with an intensity that the hotel staff had learned to respect. He often hung the sign for extended periods. The maids knew to wait. On the morning of January 9th, a maid named Alice Monaghan decided she had waited long enough. She entered the room and found Tesla in his bed. His body was already cold. The room was in the state that had become its natural condition. Windows slightly open, traces of bread and seed on the sills and floor, papers scattered on every surface. The assistant medical examiner, Dr. H.C. Wembley, arrived and ruled the cause of death as coronary thrombosis, a natural causes. There would be no autopsy. There was no suspicion of foul play. An old man, alone, in a hotel room. It happened every day in New York. What happened next was not ordinary. Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovich, arrived at the hotel within hours. He later claimed that when he reached the room, he could see that someone had already been through Tesla's belongings. Papers had been moved. A notebook was missing. The safe in the room had been opened. The FBI moved quickly. Despite the fact that Tesla had been a naturalized American citizen since 1891, more than 50 years before his death, his papers were seized under the authority of the Office of Alien Property Custodian, a wartime agency normally responsible for the assets of enemy nationals. The legal basis for treating a deceased American citizen as an alien was questionable at best. But it was January of 1943. The country was at war. Germany and Japan threatened from both sides, and Tesla had been publicly discussing a weapon of extraordinary destructive power for nearly a decade. The justification was that Tesla's research might contain information relevant to national security, specifically the Teleforce particle beam weapon. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, took personal interest in the case. Memos from the period, now declassified and available in the National Archives, show Hoover declaring the matter most secret and ordering that all of Tesla's documents be secured immediately. The Bureau was not subtle. Agents arrived at the New Yorker hotel and at a Manhattan storage facility on West 46th Street, where Tesla had kept additional materials in trunks he had been unable to pay storage fees on for years. Everything was boxed, labeled, and transported to a secure location. The speed of the operation suggested that the government had been preparing for this moment, that someone had been watching Tesla and waiting. The task of evaluating Tesla's papers fell to Dr. John G. Trump, a professor of electrical engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and, not incidentally, the uncle of a future American president. Trump was a respected scientist with expertise in high-voltage equipment and electromagnetic fields. He was precisely the kind of person you would want evaluating the work of Nikola Tesla. He spent several days reviewing the documents. His conclusion was measured, and depending on your perspective, either reassuring or devastating. The papers contained, Trump reported, nothing of immediate military value. Tesla's claims about the Teleforce weapon were speculative. His theories on power transmission were interesting, but not actionable. His notes on various inventions were often incomplete, more conceptual than practical. In Trump's professional opinion, the papers represented the work of a brilliant man whose most productive years were behind him. The papers were eventually released, after years of bureaucratic delays and diplomatic negotiations between the United States and Yugoslavia. Most of them, approximately 80 trunks of Tesla's documents, notebooks, personal correspondence, and personal effects were shipped to Belgrade, where they now reside in the Nikola Tesla Museum on Krunska Street, a modest building that receives visitors from around the world. But researchers have long noted that the inventory does not match. At least 20 trunks that were cataloged by the Office of Alien Property in New York never arrived in Yugoslavia. Their contents remain unknown. Their location, if they still exist, has never been disclosed by any agency of the United States government. Freedom of information requests have produced redacted documents and polite refusals. The 20 missing trunks have become one of the enduring mysteries of 20th century science. What did Tesla write in those final years, and why does someone still want to keep it secret? The funeral was held on January 12, 1943, at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine on Amsterdam Avenue in Manhattan. More than 2,000 people attended. Messages of condolence came from across the world, including from the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, and from 3 Nobel laureates. The mayor of New York, Fiorello LaGuardia, delivered a eulogy by radio. For one afternoon, the world remembered that Nikola Tesla had existed and that his existence had mattered. Then the world moved on. The hotel cleaned room 3327. The Do Not Disturb sign was removed. The breadcrumbs were swept away. The pigeon droppings were scrubbed from the windowsill. New linens were brought up from the laundry. Fresh items from the 450,000 pieces processed each day. The room was made ready for the next guest. And in the basement, 4 stories below the lobby, the Frankenstein board continued to hum. Edison's direct current still powered the lights. The steam engine still turned the generators. The hotel went on. A man's life had ended. The building did not notice. But somewhere in a government warehouse, in trunks that would not be opened for years, and in 20 trunks that may never be opened at all, the last thoughts of Nikola Tesla waited in the dark. Chapter 10. The Hotel That Refused to Die. After the New Yorker closed in 1972, the city lost more than half its vanished hotel rooms in a single building, and the red sign went dark for nearly 40 years. The hotel had survived the Depression. It had survived the war. It had even survived the 1950s and 60s, when newer, shinier hotels pulled the convention trade away, and the neighborhood around 34th Street began its long decline. During the Second World War, the hotel had thrived, filled with military officers and government officials. In the post-war boom, it hosted conventions and corporate events. But by the early 1970s, New York City itself was collapsing. Crime was rising. The tax base was shrinking. Times Square had become a byword for danger. Midtown hotels were closing at a rate that would have seemed impossible a generation earlier. The city would lose nearly 200,000 jobs between 1969 and 1976. It would nearly declare bankruptcy in 1975. The New Yorker shut its doors in 1972. The loss was staggering. 2,500 rooms vanished from the city's hotel inventory overnight. The building sat empty, its hallways silent, its Frankenstein board dark for the first time since 1930. The red neon sign on the roof, which had been a landmark visible from the Jersey Shore, went black. Pigeons nested on the window ledges of the upper floors. Rain leaked through the roof. The Art Deco metalwork in the lobby began to tarnish. What followed was a strange and improbable second life. In 1975, the Unification Church of Reverend Sun Myung Moon purchased the building for $5.6 million, a fraction of its construction cost. The church intended to use it as a residence for its members and a center for its operations in New York. The building was renamed the World Mission Center. In 1982, 4,000 couples were married simultaneously in a mass ceremony held inside the hotel's ballroom. The image of thousands of identically dressed brides and grooms filling the space where big band orchestras had once played was one of the more surreal moments in the building's history. The church used the building for nearly 2 decades. Parts of it were renovated. Parts of it were neglected. The power plant in the basement was partially decommissioned. The tunnel to Penn Station was sealed. The ice rink was long gone. The building was alive but altered, its identity as a hotel replaced by something few of its original builders could have imagined. Then, in 1994, the New Yorker reopened as a hotel. The Wyndham Hotel Group took over management and began the slow work of restoration. The transformation was modest at first. Rooms that had been built for jazz-age luxury were updated with basic amenities and offered at $45 a night. The grandeur was diminished but present. The bones of the building, the Art Deco lobby, the soaring ceilings, the geometric metalwork, the marble floors were too strong to be erased by 2 decades of neglect. Guests began to return. Convention business trickled back. The hallways, silent for so long, filled again with the sounds of suitcase wheels and elevator chimes. In 2005, the red neon sign was relit. It had been dark for more than 3 decades. When it blazed back to life above 34th Street, some longtime New Yorkers wept. The sign consumed enough electricity to power a row of houses. It turned the clouds above it a faint red on overcast nights. It was not just a sign. It was a proof of survival. The building had outlasted the Depression, the war, the urban collapse, and the mass wedding. It was still standing. It was still open. It was still glowing. Tesla would have understood. He too had survived long past the moment when the world expected him to disappear. And like the hotel, his survival was not glamorous. It was stubborn, improbable, and slightly mysterious. The building that refused to die. The man who refused to be forgotten. Their stories were always the same story. They just took a long time to realize it. Chapter 11. 100 Milestones in the World. In 2008, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers placed the New Yorker hotel's basement generators alongside Niagara Falls in the record of human achievement. The IEEE Milestone Program recognizes the most significant achievements in the history of electrical and electronic engineering. There are only a few hundred milestones worldwide. The Niagara Falls hydroelectric plant, which used Tesla's alternating current system to harness the power of the falls in 1895, received its designation in 2004. 4 years later, the New Yorker hotel's direct current power plant joined the list. The irony is layered and inescapable. Both sites are celebrated as milestones. One represents Tesla's greatest triumph. The other is the building where he died in poverty, powered by the technology of his rival. The IEEE does not deal in irony. It deals in engineering significance. And the New Yorker's power plant was, by any objective measure, a remarkable piece of engineering, a self-contained generating station that kept a 43-story building independent of the public grid for more than 3 decades. The plaque commemorating the milestone can be found in the hotel's lobby, a quiet bronze rectangle that most guests walk past without reading. The Frankenstein switchboard is still visible in the hotel's basement. Visitors with special permission can descend to the sublevels and see the 60-foot board, its labels still legible, still bearing the names of systems that no longer exist. The ice rink, the original kitchen, long decommissioned circuits for floors that have been reconfigured multiple times since the 1930s. The board has not generated a watt in years. The hotel now draws its power from the public grid, from Consolidated Edison, and from a system that carries alternating current, Tesla's current. The victory just arrived several decades late. It is a museum piece that was never intended to be a museum. The engineers who built it in 1929 were solving a practical problem: how to power the largest hotel in the city, reliably and cheaply. They did not know that their switchboard would outlast the systems it controlled. They did not know it would become a monument. Things that are built well have a way of becoming monuments, whether anyone planned it or not. Upstairs, on the 33rd floor, rooms 3327 and 3328 are rented to guests at approximately $500 per night. The rooms have been renovated but retain their original dimensions. Photographs of Tesla hang on the walls. A small plaque identifies the space as the place where Tesla spent his final years. The plaque itself has a peculiar history. It was created decades ago, but sat in storage for 25 years before being installed. Even in death, Tesla had to wait for recognition. The Tesla Science Center at Wardenclyffe, on the site where the tower once stood on Long Island, was established after a long grassroots campaign that included a famous internet fundraiser in 2012, led by the cartoonist Matthew Inman. The campaign raised more than $1 million in a matter of days. The property, which had been slated for commercial development as a retail store, was purchased for preservation. The laboratory building still stands, its brick walls weathered but intact. The tower, of course, is long gone, demolished for scrap in 1917. But the foundations remain 120 feet deep in the Long Island soil, a buried monument to the most ambitious vision in the history of electrical engineering. They are too deep and too massive to remove. And there is one more piece of belated justice. In June of 1943, 5 months after Tesla's death, the United States Supreme Court ruled in the case of Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of America versus the United States that Tesla's patents for radio transmission predated those of Guglielmo Marconi. The ruling effectively credited Tesla as the inventor of radio, overturning decades of attribution. Marconi had received the Nobel Prize for his radio work in 1909. Tesla had received nothing. The Supreme Court's decision came too late for Tesla to know about it. It came too late for him to benefit financially. But it came. The record was corrected. History, when it bothers to look, eventually finds the truth. The world that Tesla built works exactly as he imagined it. Alternating current flows from power plants through high-voltage transmission lines across entire continents and arrives in homes, hospitals, schools, and factories at the exact frequency and voltage his system specified. The polyphase motor he envisioned in Budapest in 1882 runs every elevator, every washing machine, every industrial pump on the planet. His name is the unit of magnetic flux density. His patents are the foundation of modern electrical engineering. And his hotel room is a tourist attraction that costs $500 a night. The distance between what he gave and what he received has not changed. It has simply become more visible. Chapter 12. The room built on pigeons and genius. Every light that turns on in the world tonight owes a debt to a man who died alone in a hotel room with breadcrumbs on the windowsill. This is not metaphor. This is arithmetic. Nikola Tesla's alternating current system delivers electricity to approximately 5 billion people on this planet. Every generator that spins in every power plant on every continent uses principles he patented. Every transformer that steps voltage up for transmission and down for use was designed according to his specifications. The motors that run the world, from the smallest appliance to the largest industrial machine, they are descendants of the device he saw complete in his mind on a walk through a Budapest park in 1882. He was paid, in total, approximately $216,000 for these contributions. The system he built had no mechanism for rewarding its creator. This is the core of the story. Not the tragedy of a man who was cheated, though he was. Not the tragedy of a man who made poor decisions, though he did. But the tragedy of a system that can absorb the gifts of genius, distribute them across the entire world, charge for them at every point of distribution, and return nothing to the source. Edison died wealthy. Westinghouse died comfortable. Morgan died one of the richest men in history. Tesla died with breadcrumbs on his windowsill and less than $1,000 to his name. The arithmetic is simple and brutal. The world took what Tesla offered. The world used it to build everything. The world forgot to pay. Tesla tore up his royalty contract out of loyalty. He built Wardenclyffe out of vision. He fed pigeons out of loneliness. Each of these acts was, in its own way, perfectly consistent with who he was, a man whose mind operated on a frequency that the world around him could not receive. He saw things that others would not see for decades. He built things that others could not build at all. And he could not do the one thing that would have protected him. He could not value himself in the currency the world understood. Room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel is the monument. Not the plaque on the wall. Not the photographs or the $500 nightly rate. The room itself, the physical space where Tesla spent his final decade, is the monument to the distance between what genius gives the world and what the world gives back. He arrived there in 1933, 77 years old, with trunks full of papers and a mind full of inventions that no one would fund. He left in January of 1943 in a body bag with a net worth of less than $1,000 and a government that seized his papers before they buried him. In between, he fed pigeons. He drank warm milk. He counted everything in threes. He announced weapons that could end war and theories that could rewrite physics. He loved a white bird with gray-tipped wings and said her death produced a light brighter than anything his machinery had ever made. He looked out a window at a city powered by his ideas and filled with people who had forgotten his name. The pigeons were his final answer. They were the only relationship he could sustain. They asked nothing of him but his presence. They came to his window and he fed them, and they returned. It was the simplest possible version of human connection, stripped of everything that terrified him. The hair, the pearls, the chaos, the unpredictability, the possibility of rejection. In the end, the pigeons were enough. They were enough to get him through the day. They were enough to give him a reason to open the window each morning. They were enough to fill a room that the rest of the world had forgotten. Outside, tonight, the red sign of the New Yorker Hotel glows above 34th Street. It is powered by alternating current at last. The Frankenstein board in the basement is dark. The steam engines are silent. The hotel buys its power from the grid now, the same grid that carries Tesla's current into every building in the city. The sign says New Yorker in letters tall enough to read from across the river. It does not say anything about Tesla. It does not need to. The electricity that lights the sign is his signature. Every wire, every transformer, every spinning generator between the power plant and that red neon tube is a sentence in a letter he wrote to the future. He just never got a reply. The door to room 3327 is closed tonight. A do not disturb sign may or may not be hanging on the handle. Inside, the room is quiet. The windows are shut. The pigeons are gone. But the lights are on. The lights are always on.